Hi guys, welcome back to the Boot Room. Today we are talking through Man United's team of the decade. Obviously as a Man City fan, I'm a little bit biased here. I'm not going to be the most objective person in the world, but obviously looking across the side of Manchester, United have had a bit of a mixed decade, haven't they? I think the back end of the decade came when sort of Ferguson left, and they've had a few managers since then. It's not always quite worked out. Mourinho, David Moyes, Van Gaal and the like hasn't quite worked out. I think under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, United are as close as they can be to a sort of long-term solution. I think they're relatively happy with him there, which is surprising because I think he's had one of the worst starts in Premier League history so far this season. The start of the decade was obviously brilliant with the likes of Vidic, Ferdinand leading United to Champions League finals. And obviously a couple of Premier League wins. So let's start with the goalkeeper. There's no question David De Gea comes in here. He was sort of brought in to replace Edwin van der Sar. He came in as a very skinny, young, 19-year-old Spaniard from Atletico Madrid. And he's won Player of the Year award at Man United multiple times this decade. He's been basically their starting keeper for every big game in the decade, except the first couple of years where Van der Sar was transitioning out of the side. Obviously, Van der Sar played in that Champions League final at Wembley. But David De Gea turned into a world-class keeper and then fell out of grace in the same decade. He sort of progressed up and then he's fallen off a cliff in recent seasons, arguably. But De Gea, no question, in his prime this decade was world-class. At right-back, Valencia goes in there, right-back. Not many competitors, really. Rafael, potentially. Obviously not Phil Jones at right-back. But Valencia was sort of joined from Wigan as a right winger, and his physicality, his presence at sort of defending made him a right back. And he was powerful. He sort of led United on to their Premier League trophies. He was the right back for those sides. Most consistent right back this decade. They haven't been blessed. And I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is the next right back that United fans are looking for to be that sort of Gary Neville stalwart at the right back sort of position. So I do think Valencia has been the best player for Man United this decade, no question. Centre-backs, Rio Ferdinand and Vidic are maybe the best partnership in the history of centre-backs in the Premier League. They both won 2 Premier Leagues together. Vidic obviously captain for most of that time. Ferdinand, though, let's start with him. Obviously not in his peak. I think his peak was arguably 07, 08, that sort of time. Champions League winning time. When they beat Chelsea in Moscow, that was where I think that was peak Rio. But he had one great season, Rio Ferdinand, when Man United won the Premier League in 2013. He was in that sort of John Terry final last hurrah kind of moment. He lost his legs, of course, and his move to QPR after Man United shows you that. But he managed to defend really smartly. He was in the PFA Team of the Year that season. The likes of Carrick sort of shielded him quite well. And I think Rio Ferdinand, one of his best ever seasons was that 2013 win of the Premier League. He was absolutely exceptional. I love it when an older player sort of has one last hurrah. I absolutely love stuff like that. Alongside Rio, it has to be his best mate, Vidic. Nemanja Vidic, on his day, was one of the best centre-backs in the world. He got into the FIFA Pro 11 in 2011 when United got to the Champions League final. Obviously, he was unlucky not to win that. He got absolutely torn apart by Pedro Villa and Messi at Wembley. But on his day, he was exceptional. Everyone remembers that 09 season where he blew Torres away, but we can't count that. We've got to count the first 4 years of this decade, and he was sublime before he went to Inter Milan, where he did drop off a cliff in terms of his form, and he just got old. What can you say? And he, had a lot of injuries as well. But Nemanja Vidic was absolutely sensational. He was a brick wall. Maybe not the best on the ball playing out from the back. I'm not sure if he'd start for a Guardiola side now, but those first 4 years, if you ask any Man United fan, that overrides the fact that he played less than half a decade for Man United, and he's still the best centre-back they saw potentially this decade. The likes of Smalling weren't awful. I think Chris Smalling, or Mike Smalling as Louis Van Gaal would say, for me, had moments where he was really, really solid. Obviously gets into the England team this decade, really solidifies himself as a top centre-back. He's doing well in Italy at the moment, but you have to say Vidic on his day was still world-class this decade, and I think United fans would probably sell a kidney to have him back in this current side if he was fit and obviously old enough. Left back, Patrice Evra, unbelievable. I mean, he started less than 33 Premier League matches in each of the 4 seasons he was at United in this decade. He scored that worldie against Bayern Munich under David Moyes in the Champions League. Obviously, they didn't get through that tie, but it was still a great goal. Evra on his day, I never thought was better than Ashley Cole or anything like that, but I think he was maybe the best left back United have seen in the last 20 years on his day. just maybe not as good enough to be the best Premier League left back of all time, but certainly up there. And those 4 years this decade, he was defensively so astute, but getting forward as well. He was a bit of a character as well. I think football's missing those kind of bubbly characters that he was. He came out in press conferences very well, and I think Man United lost a bit of his energy when he left, to be honest with you. And obviously he went to the likes of Juventus, and he had the back end of his career this decade was still pretty strong as well, despite leaving Man United. Paul Scholes, in 2012, Man City lift the Premier League trophy. Paul Scholes retires. And then soon after, Paul Scholes comes out of retirement, actually against Man City in a derby. And that season, Man United win the Premier League. He was sublime when he came out of retirement. He only scored about 1 goal, I think, in the 16 months that in his second stint at Man United. But for me, he was just simply unplayable. He never lose the ball. And Man United always had a chance with him. Obviously, we got to talk about the period before he retired, where he was, again, sublime. Getting United to the Champions League final the way that United got through. They don't have the best side in the world, but him and Carrick, and even Park Ji-sung, Ryan Giggs, that midfield wasn't the most glorious midfield in the world, I think that's fair to say. But Scholes was at the back end of his career physically, where he couldn't sort of run after players and press as high as he could. But he wouldn't lose the ball. He'd keep it ticking over, and he was sublime for a lot of games. Alongside him, we're going to play a sort of 4-3-3. It has to be Ryan Giggs. In this period of his career at Man United, before he hangs up his boots in 2014, Giggs was moved into the centre of midfield. He played some really pivotal sort of moments in midfield. He scored a great goal against Schalke as United gets the Champions League final. Another one under his, in his spell at Man United. That would have been his sort of 4th or 5th Champions League final. And he even gets an assist for Wayne Rooney when Man United drew equal to Barcelona. He was smart on the ball. He wasn't as good a passer as Scholes, I think that's fair to say. But he could hit a ball true, and I think that even that assist to Michael Owen in the Manchester derby, obviously the previous decade, shows he was a very precise passer of the ball, very smart. He did little 1-2s, not the most physical. Obviously, he was getting older at this point, but he retired at the age of 37, still operating at a world-class level. Wins 2 Premier Leagues this decade. Absolutely incredible player, and he wasn't as sheer pace as he was in the late 90s and early 2000s, but Ryan Giggs in midfield makes a lot of sense. And then to the right of that midfield, we're going to put in Michael Carrick. Michael Carrick has sort of gone under the radar from a lot of Man United fans. He's actually picked up one of the most sort of decorated players this decade. He obviously stayed beyond the Ferguson era. He won the Europa League, the FA Cup and the League Cup at Man United. And Michael Carrick, there's a chant that used to go around Old Trafford about how he looks and plays like Paul Scholes, but isn't quite Paul Scholes. And Michael Carrick, underutilised by England, I think that's fair to say. Same with Scholes, to be honest. But Michael Carrick wouldn't lose the ball. Bit like a Busquets kind of role. He'd keep the ball ticking over. And Man United, again, always had with Scholes and Carrick, they always had an opportunity to stay in the game, because defensively they'd rarely get caught out. They weren't the most glamorous players in the world, I think that's fair to say. But Carrick was a very, very smart and often underrated midfielder. On the right, we're going to put Marcus Rashford. I think the only player that's still playing for Man United, which probably says a lot this decade. Rashford's got 50 goals for Man United already this decade. He's only 21. He's an England international. 3 trophies with Man United. It's absolutely brilliant. I think you could have he could have retired after sort of turning Martin Di Michaelis inside out in the Manchester derby. That was his sort of debut in the derby, in some of the biggest games in his career. At that point, he's only sort of 18, 17. Incredible stuff, and he's definitely matured and blossomed into a world-beaten sort of left winger striker. I think there's still a debate about where his best position is, but it's undoubtedly one of the most attacking players Man United have got, most prowess up front. And he can blossom into one of the best strikers Man United have got in the following decade, let alone this previous decade. So we'll stick him on the right. It's going to be tough. I have to put Wayne Rooney on the left, which is a bit of a cop-out because he is one of the highest scorers, the highest scorer in Man United history. This decade, he reached 250 goals for Man United in 2017. Obviously, he scores in the Champions League final. Didn't quite win it, of course, but 2 Premier Leagues, Europa League, League Cup, FA Cup. He was pivotal in a lot of that, and obviously past his peak, but still scoring worldies against West Ham. past his peak, he wasn't often utilised in the right way. Under Mourinho, he wasn't quite fancied. Under Van Gaal, he wasn't quite fancied. His fitness probably dropped off a little bit, but he still managed to notch up a lot of goals. And the fact he drops into midfield and still scored goals, I think, criminally underrated. And maybe if he'd worked harder, I think it's easy for me to say here sitting in an armchair, but I think Man United fans would have seen a bit of better longevity in this decade. In the back end of his career at Man United, he could have scored even more goals potentially. And then up front, maybe the best signing in the last 15 years for Man United, arguably, as it was just sort of a 30 million cash swap to win the Premier League. Basically, they bought the Premier League in one small transfer, and that was Robin Van Persie. You weaken a rival as well in terms of Arsenal. He goes there for 30 million. He scores 30 goals in all competitions, 28 in the following season. So about 58 goals and 105 appearances for sort of 2.5 seasons. Not too bad at all if you sign a player to win you stuff. Didn't quite work out under Van Gaal, when I think a lot of people thought it would after what happened at the World Cup with the Holland national side. But Van Persie up front, he wins Man United a bitter Premier League trophy, takes it away from the blue side of Manchester. Obviously scores that brilliant free kick at the Etihad. But Van Persie, no questions, one of the best signings Man United have made this decade, let alone in terms of a player. His finishing is unbelievable. Everyone remembers that Rooney to Van Persie volley, similar to Song to Van Persie at the Emirates. That sort of trademark left-footed volley across his body. Absolutely exceptional. But here's the lineup. Let me know what you think about that, guys. I think Man United have had a very mixed decade. Obviously, the early 2010s, they could have gone on to win a treble, actually, Man United, if they'd beaten Barcelona in the Champions League final. They were winning things for fun, and they were grinding through. They weren't playing their most scintillating football this decade under Ferguson. Obviously, Ferguson retires. Likes of Van Gaal, Mourinho, David Moyes can't make it quite click, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's in there now. It's going to be interesting to see how long he lasts the following decade. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below about that. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the Boot Room, and we'll be doing a couple more Team of the Decades before we go for the new year, and then some transfer stuff coming up soon.